What's up YouTube? For this video, we're going to do a review of these sneakers right here. These are the Nike Air Seshes, which is Nike's first dancing shoe. As a beginner dancer myself, I was really intrigued about these shoes when they first announced them. So for this video, first we're just going to talk about the materials of the shoe, and then I'm going to give my overall impressions when it comes to performing and dancing in these sneakers. I'll pretty much break down my pros and cons when it comes to dancing and wearing these on feet, and then at the end I'll give my overall thoughts. So with that being said, let's get into it. Starting with the upper, you can see that it's mostly comprised of this white synthetic leather with a pebbled finish. It's definitely synthetic and it's not real leather of course, but it actually is quite plush to the touch. I'm going to talk about the comfort later in the video. As we move to the toe box, you'll see an obvious strip of suede in this gray colorway here. And then in regards to the design of the swooshes, on the lateral sides of both shoes, you'll see the big red swoosh. But on the medial sides of both shoes, you'll see a reverse swoosh. It's basically a black printed stroke right there. Moving to the tongue itself, when you have the shoe close up in hand, it looks like canvas at first, but when you feel it and touch it, it feels like a soft mesh. The lacing system itself is pretty simple and straightforward, but you'll see these gray suede lace holes that interlap the sides of the shoe right there. And then at the top of the tongue, design-wise, you'll see a nice red tongue. It pretty much feels like nylon. And you'll see the obvious black swoosh stamped right on top. I would say the tongue is fairly thin. It's not really padded or anything. If anything, this tongue reminds me of the Nike Dunk tongue. As we move to the back of the shoe, you'll see this obvious foam padding along the ankle collar. And then there's a mesh overlay on top of that. And then as we move to the back of the shoe, you'll see this obvious red pull tab with the Nike branding. As we move down to the midsole portion of the shoe, at first impressions when you feel this, it's a nice and plush foam. Apparently they call this the Cushlon foam, and again more on comfort later in the video, but first impressions it is pretty soft. Apparently deep underneath as well is another Air Zoom cushioning unit. Design wise, you can see a nice blue accent strip that lines the midsole here as well, which is pretty reminiscent of the Court Legacies. But one thing to really make note of here is the rubber outsole that meets the midsole. On the lateral side, you can see that it barely makes an appearance right at the tip of the pinky area. But when it comes to the medial side, you can see it making its appearance right around the midfoot area, right around where the ball of the foot starts. And again, it's a very obvious rubber traction pattern right here all the way into the toes. And just at first glance as well, in terms of feeling, you have the soft foam right here. But as it transitions into the rubber part, it's a very firm and hard rubber outsole. Moving down to the outsole of the shoe, this is pretty much what the outsole looks like. As you can see, you're pretty much met with a bunch of little circular nubs. You have a couple of articulation grooves, 3 of them here to be exact. And then right in your face is that big glow-in-the-dark swoosh. Just a quick detail to note that will be relevant to the performance aspect later in the video, but you'll notice here there's a change in density and frequency of these circular nubs. Right around the balls of the feet here, it's a lot more spread out and spaced out, whereas when you're met at the tip of the toes and near the midsole basically, the circular nubs are definitely more dense and increased and put together. So yeah, that's basically the breakdown when it comes to materials. Next, I want to talk about the performance aspect of these shoes. Just a quick disclaimer, I myself am a beginner, which means that this is by no means an expert review. My personal experience with dance is that I've taken some classes in the past, and I personally just dance as a hobby. My personal style of dance is that I particularly enjoy things like hip hop, which includes breakdancing and popping and things like that. And I've also learned some choreography and just some other basic fundamentals like that. So just keep that in mind as I do my own personal opinion and review on these sneakers. With that being said, let's talk about the pros first. Pro number 1 was that I enjoyed the impact protection. I really like the midsole technology that they use, from the Cushlon foam to the Air Zoom unit. And it made moves such as jumping, hopping, leaping more pleasant and more forgiving upon impact. Pro number 2 is that I'm particularly fond of this glow-in-the-dark swoosh. It's just a nice touch in my opinion, and it's a cool way to highlight your footwork and your footwear when you're out dancing, whether it's at night or at a club or just any other dance party when it's dark out. Pro number 3 is that I think these shoes did well when it came to pivot turns and spins, at least when you're in place. If you look at this rubber outsole traction pattern, you'll see that at least here in the heel, The circular nubs are arranged in a circular pattern, as well as towards the ball of the feet too. So when it came to moves like spinning on your toes, pivoting on the balls of your feet, and even spinning on your heels, I think this did great. Again, this is very specific to when you're just standing in place, but when it came to just turns and spins, I think the traction was pretty good. However, this will transition me into my first con. Con number one is that even though I felt pretty good spinning in one spot, I really did not have much glide or slide when it came to dynamic movements. Some examples are like when I'm trying to do a slide sideways, or when I'm trying to do a glide in multiple directions, I just didn't have that slide or that slipperiness. And I just felt like when I'm trying to slide in different directions, I just had way too much friction or traction. I think this has something to do with the design they did here in the midsole part, where the density of the rubber nubs is just a lot denser as compared to the bottom of the feet. But yeah, although I think this may be somewhat advantageous to like quick stops, again, when I'm trying to give off the illusion that I'm sliding or moving flawlessly and effortlessly, it was just hard to portray that. Yeah, specifically when it came to gliding, I just felt really hard gliding in these shoes. Con number two is regarding the toe box. I feel like this will relate more to street performers or even like ballet dancers, but just know that although there is an articulation at the balls of the feet, you cannot stand on your toes. The tip of the toe box does not provide any structure or support. There's no platform or stability or anything like that, so there is no way that you'll be able to stand on your tippy toes like this. So yeah, just know that if you're trying to do any certain moves that requires you to be at the very tip of your toes, that's really not going to happen with these shoes, and you're really going to risk rolling your ankle or something if you try something like that in these. Alright, con number three was the comfort and the fit. To be honest, I didn't find these shoes to be the most comfortable, at least in terms of the upper. For me, I went true to size at 9.5, but I do feel like these shoes run a bit on the narrow side. So with that, after having worn these shoes for a good 15 to 20 minutes straight of sessioning, my foot did start to feel sore, particularly on the middle part of my foot. I suggest that if you do want to buy these shoes, you should size up at least a half or a whole, depending on how wide your foot is. In terms of length, I felt like it fit me well, but again, it runs quite narrow. Maybe I have to break these in even more, but at least my first impressions is that after dancing in these for a while, my foot did start to feel sore. Alright, so those were the main pros and cons of these shoes, and now I want to give my overall thoughts. Overall, I will admit that I was a little bit disappointed in this shoe, and I think this shoe did fall a little short for me. Maybe I did have high expectations when it comes to trying my very first ever dance shoe, but at the same time, I guess I gotta understand that with this being the first dance shoe, the first time is never perfect for anything. I'm sure there's still a lot to be learned, and there's still a lot of experimenting to be done when it comes to engineering the perfect dance shoe. The things I did enjoy most about this shoe is again the midsole technology, the Cushlon foam, and the air zoom unit, which allowed the shoe to be very soft on your feet and forgiving with impact moves. But aside from that, I feel like I was very underwhelmed and again disappointed when it came to the outsole technology. Personally for me, I would have hoped for a little more something that allows for a smoother glide, a little less friction and a little less traction, and just something that allows me to move a little more loose and freely. Some other major cons again are the sizing. It wasn't the most comfortable shoe on feet. And this is my personal opinion, but I was also not quite blown away with the aesthetic and the silhouette of the shoe. Personally for me, I could have done without the reversed black swoosh here. I would have preferred that they just do the red swoosh like this on both sides. And in terms of the silhouette and shape, it just seems like a very generic shoe, but I guess this will appeal more to the general masses. With that being said, I am still hopeful though that perhaps Nike or maybe any other sneaker brand will create a better version of the dancing shoe in the future, and perhaps maybe the Air Sesh 2 will be a much better version than this one. So I am curious to know though, for those of you who are watching that are dancers and have tried this shoe, I just want to know if you guys agree or disagree with anything I had to say. Or for those of you who don't dance at all, what are your thoughts on this shoe and the silhouette? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you made it this far into the video, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It'll help me out a lot, and consider subscribing for more content on styles, sneakers, and science. While you're at it, be sure to check out my previous videos here or here. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.